What's up, folks? Khaled Bay. I want to welcome you back to my podcast titled Let's Talk. When I first came up with the idea for Let's Talk, it was and or is my intent to provide unbiased, unopinionated, objective dialogue. I say intent because I am aware of the fact that even objectivity can be perceived by clouded reason as opinion. And so, as I make my effort to remain objective, it is my request to you, the viewer, that you too remain objective in your receipt and assimilation of the information that we're discussing here. And so, without further ado, let's talk. What's up, folks? Welcome to Let's Talk. I'm Khalid Bay, your host. Today's topic, Project 2025. What does it mean? What is its implications? This is what we're talking about today, but from a position of objectivity. All right? Objectivity is key. And our effort here is merely to talk about and discuss the issues, not choosing a side. I'm not speaking in support of nor against any Democratic agenda or Republican agenda. I'm not here to tell you how you should vote, up or down. The intent here is merely to lay out the issues, to make an objective argument on some of its key points, and even being truthful and straightforward about what I think is overreach. Again, I ask you not to mistake my objectivity for opinion. I'm not going to be suggestive here. I'm merely going to talk about what I believe is practical or not, and always stick to what I know is true. Truth is truth, therefore needs no apology nor doctrine. So, let's get it started. So, Project 2025 is the conservative agenda that came into fruition via what was referred to as the Conservative Promise, which was launched in April of 2022. A concern expressed by the developers of this effort is that what we are now witnessing in 2024 is a repeat of the late 70s, a time in which conservatives are convinced that Americans have lost their way. Now, they're referring to the time of what was considered the flower child, the era of the Vietnam War, too much weed smoking and LSD using, where it appeared that Americans, particularly young Americans, became disconnected from what they argue is America's intent. Project 25 was developed by an organization called the Heritage Foundation, which had its beginnings in 1973. The purpose of the Heritage Foundation is to do what they say is the true purpose of American politics, which is to ensure the well-being and preservation of the American family. Project 2025 seeks to restore the American family as the center of American life. Pause. Now, in the spirit of remaining objective, I, for one, have been a person who argued over the years, and particularly when I was an elected official in local government here in Syracuse, that the family and its structure was the key to any person's positive or negative encounter or interaction with society. Again, I got to purposefully reiterate here and be redundant and say that my effort is to be objective, to be honest about things that even I've considered to voice myself, but also be equally objective and honest about what I think, again, is overreach. But this is ultimately what the effort of Project 25 is rooted in, is the idea of the restoring of American society through the restoring, stabilizing, and ensuring of the American family. Now, Project 25 consists of 30 chapters of 920 pages. Some argue that this is a tactic to deter people from reading. I don't know. Will people read 920 pages? Some adversaries of Project 25 say that it is a Christian nationalist manifesto. Others say that it is the Crusade Wars revisited. Project 25 is backed by more than 100 conservative groups. While the Heritage Foundation has a stated goal of strengthening and preserving the American family, the aim of Project 25 is the restructuring of the federal government. Project 25 outlines what are its four key efforts, referred to as its four pillars. I'm going to simplify the message here within each of these four pillars. Pillar one is about who fits the Project 2025 agenda and who doesn't. Pillar two is about the development of a personnel database in an effort to vet personnel who may fit the agenda. Pillar three is the method to train the personnel according to the new policy or agenda. And pillar four is deployment of said strategy or strategy implementation. The logic here is that the conservative president will be more supported and therefore more effective with the installation of a like minded team. There are a number of issues that the developers of Project 25 have designated the problems of American society and their stated course of action to eliminate said problems. Project 25 seeks to reverse protections on diversity, reproductive rights, and LGBTQ. They aim to end all DEI programs. This is on page 258. And there is an assumed underlying argument that DEI is more about LGBTQ than it is about race. They aim to eliminate any discussions on critical race theory and any discussions about gender identity. Project 25 seeks to dismantle what they refer to as a racist education department. Now, for our people, I'm referring to people who look like me. Many of us have been guilty of referring to it as the public fool system. So let's not act like there may not be some common understanding there. Project 25 seeks to eliminate the Head Start program. This, of course, being replaced by parental teaching. Again, going back to the point of the family being reestablished as the center of American society. And there's a reported effort to put all students into private Christian schools in order to keep all the kids under one faith. Now, I don't know that that's true or not. That's been an argument made. I'm just stating what's been stated. If that is an effort, of course, there's a contradiction there and there's a problem there because we are talking about a violation of the First Amendment right to freedom of religion. We can't claim, people on the right, to be fighting for constitutional protections while at the same time demanding for what is essentially the usurping of another. I'm not saying you're doing it. I'm just saying in the event that that is an effort of yours, chill. Project 2025 seeks to ban African American studies on all levels of education. This is on page 336. Now, if this is a dial back or even an elimination of the slave story, I ain't mad at that. You got to think about it. Every February, they want to re-indoctrinate your kids with this feeling of inferiority and putting them in positions where they second guess their value. Why would you want to hear that slave story over and over again? I remember Morgan Freeman making the statement, he don't celebrate Black History Month because it's merely a repeat of the things that we don't want to remember. Now, people say you shouldn't forget the past, so not to repeat the same mistakes in the future. I agree. But there's a difference between not forgetting or re-indoctrinating our kids for generations. Yeah, we can get that one out of here. Project 25 seeks to eliminate Homeland Security, the FBI, and the Department of Justice. This is on page 133. So this is the elimination of Big Brother. But what will it be replaced with? I mean, the Patriot Act, things that allow for the government to spy on citizens, I'm not mad at that. That can go, right? Certainly to a degree. But the FBI, and replace it with what? That's the question that has to be asked. They want to criminalize and institute a ban on pornography, and its producers, after the fact, should be jailed. This is on page 5. Project 2025 seeks to end birthright citizenship. This is on page 319. Now, to clarify, this means that persons who are born in the American territories, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, so on and so forth, or persons having only one parent who is an American citizen could be denied citizenship. Now, this is dangerous. This is a classic example of what I mean by overreach. Groups that will more than likely be affected by this type of measure: persons native to the Caribbean, persons native to Eastern European nations, persons of East Asian descent. Well, everybody. Project 2025 calls on the president to execute the Alien Enemy Act of 1789, which gives the president additional powers to detain non citizens during a time of war. Whoa, now, starting to go off the rails a bit here. Think about it. If you're pulling back birthright citizenship, then who does this affect? That means many of the persons who are deemed citizens now will, if this is allowed, be potentially detained in a time of war. To get an idea of what that's like, think back to Pearl Harbor, right? World War II, when the Japanese were detained in concentration camps because they were considered threats to the state. Very, very dangerous situation there. Project 25 talks about the largest deportation in history. This is on page 140. The use of the military to suppress large scale protests. Now, again, you can't talk about constitutional protections out one side of your mouth, but out the other side, talk about taking constitutional protections. The right of the citizen to assemble, the right of the citizen to protest or file a grievance against his government is supported by the Constitution. This measure eliminates those. They also talk about eliminating NOAA, or the National Weather Service, because you know they don't like climate change. All right, no comment. Let's move on. Now, one portion of this document that you should most certainly be concerned about is Schedule F. Remember, do not mistake my objectivity for opinion. Just calling a spade here. Schedule F seeks to give presidential control over all government workers. Now, I'm not sure if you know, but that is approximately 2 million people spread out throughout the United States that Project 25 seeks to have answer only to the president. The writers of Project 2025 will very likely end up a part of the Trump administration. All civil servants will answer to the president. This too is equally interesting. While it's known that one of the principal arguments of the right is decentralization, here they seek to centralize power into a single branch of government. Something to pay attention to. Project 2025 seeks to dismantle the administrative state and return self-governance back to the people. Give the legislative powers back to the people. Now, this too is one of those things I argued for a long time as an elected official. I thought that government became too bureaucratic. The establishment of authorities and the like that were only controlled by executives, or worse, controlled by persons who the people did not elect, who are ultimately in charge in setting and controlling policy, moves in contradistinction to a democracy or true democracy. And so I am not mad at the idea of returning the legislative powers back to Congress and taking them out of the hands of persons that the people did not elect. Now, I support this for as long as what they're referring to is not a returning to states' rights. That's dangerous for people who look like me and you, right? Returning to states' rights means that some of these states can do whatever they want to do with no recourse. Think about it. Now, one thing that many of you may find interesting, that's if you don't know about it, is Project 2025 is the second attempt. The first attempt was via a document titled A Mandate for Leadership, and its principles was implemented or used during the Reagan administration in 1981. It was guised as a capital markets strategy. It's from this where you get ideas of trickle-down theory, which still affects us today. There are some very, very interesting similarities between Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. For one, Ronald Reagan was a celebrity. Donald Trump is deemed a celebrity. Two, despite what you assume, Ronald Reagan was not that politically savvy. And of course, Donald Trump, not at all politically savvy. And third, not sure if you're aware, but one of the struggles with Ronald Reagan during his campaign for governor, his governor tenure, and for president was his preoccupation with his celebrity status. Sounds familiar? Think about it. Very, very interesting similarities. Project 2025 also lists a number of additional problems or concerns. For example, inflation drowning our families. This is a fact. Prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, and after the pandemic, there's been a lot of stimulus money pumped into families. Right alongside that was a number of corporate bailouts. This over or mass producing of money has driven down the value of the dollar. And so the orange juice in the store, the bag of Doritos in the store didn't increase in value. The value of the dollar dropped, but ultimately drove up prices in the grocery store. These types of price increases have tightened the wallet of many of the families in America. That's a fact. Diamonds are valuable because they're scarce and you can't hardly find them. Pennies are not so valuable and people pass them on the street because there's so many of them. So very similarly, when there's so many dollars in the market without enough commodities to support them, then you have the value of the dollar dropping and the cost of living increases. That's a real problem. You got an increase in drug use, overdose, and deaths. That's a fact. We all bear witness to the number of dissociative issues that we encounter in a single passing street. I know here in the city of Syracuse, we have a number of issues, an uncountable amount of issues with young people and people in general addicted to chemical substances and now suffering from dissociation. Now, keep in mind, these are not my words. This is from Project 2025. Children suffer toxic normalization of transgender and gender identity. I'll leave that for you to discern. And pornography invading our school libraries. So many problems of our society are rooted in the crisis of the family. That I agree with. It goes back to my earlier argument. I don't in any way disagree with the fact that parents and families are the solution to empowering people and bringing them back to some sort of normalcy here in our country. Additional stated problems continue. Now, this one right here, I'm going to have to agree with 100%. Eliminate marriage penalties and welfare programs. Now, if you've never known what this meant, if you don't know what it means, if you haven't caught on to this tactic, and I'm going to call it a tactic because the entire process was weaponized. If you were a woman with a child, the father could not live in the house if you were seeking social services. It doesn't matter how financially desolate the family situation is. If the father lives in the house or if she happens to be married, she cannot get any assistance. Understand what that means. Oftentimes, what happened then is the father moves out, or they lie about the father living there, get caught, and get disqualified. Or they break up altogether because, in order for her to get social services, she has to take the father to court for child support, whether he's paying money to her or not. This particular tactic has seriously dismantled the family, particularly families living in economically challenging situations. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. That needs to go. No more stealthy attacks on the family unit by the government. I agree with that 100%. Continuing on, welfare reform. install work requirements for food stamps. Now, some of you are going to be a little testy, but I'm going to agree with this 100%. And if you are testy, you need to check yourself. Let me give you some logic. There was a time referred to as a hunter gatherer time when men would go out and hunt for food and bring it back. I want to speed up the story. But there was a genius in women where they discovered vegetation that was ultimately edible. And then by simply planting seeds, they could grow food that they can eat. This discovery resulted in an increase in vegetation and therefore food, but the increase or the abundance of food had eliminated the need in the hunter gatherer to go hunt. Instead, he decided to lay around and tell her about how to grow food. The short of it is this: anywhere there appears to be an abundance of resources, you have overpopulation, right? An abundance of resources eliminates the need to go and hunt or work for it. It's a serious psychological impact that's had by the idea that things are free. And when we get the assumption that things are free, that we can acquire things with no effort, then we will make no effort to acquire those things. The problem is, for people who grew up in economically challenging conditions, for African Americans, for Latinos, and others, you are looking to change the trajectory for your offspring. You're looking to build wealth for them, to put them in a different trajectory than the one that you were born into, that our parents were born into. You can't pass welfare onto your kids. You can't pass no job itself onto your kids. You got to figure out a way to build value. You don't do that without being a producer or a creator. I'm going to yield on that. By the way, objectivity, that's not an opinion, that's a fact. Now, some people, both adversaries of Project 2025 and some producers of Project 2025, have referred to this conservative effort as a revolution. But is it a revolution? I see this effort, referred to as Project 2025, as a socio-political civil war with far-reaching implications and potential real effects that we may witness. Project 2025 is not a one-shot effort. This is an effort that has and or will be implemented over time. Think about it. The Heritage Foundation's first attempt at guiding the president in the direction that they prefer began with Ronald Reagan. The assumption by some, I can't say many, I don't know how many, but the assumption by some is that this is an effort for Donald Trump. Wrong. This is a conservative effort. The executive is the prime target, but every elected person, local, state, and federal, who buy into the conservative ideal, this particular ideal is who they're looking for. This is not just about Donald Trump. This is about any person who buys into the principles and ideas communicated in Project 2025. If your focus is simply on this presidential election, you've missed the mark. Project 2025 is a concerted effort. It is a launch of a campaign. Campaigns don't end in just an instant. They last for a while. This is a concerted effort to change and restructure the federal government. Now, there's a lot of things that people don't like about this document. I can see why. There are also many problems stated in this document that you cannot deny. My question is, what are your alternatives to the problem? What's your ideas for solving them? Okay, we don't like this idea. We don't like their approach. And their approach is probably the biggest thing that people is concerned about. It doesn't deny the fact that the problems are real. It's their approach to solving the problems that people are uncomfortable with. But what's your solution for the problem? Talk is cheap. Complaining never got you anywhere. what will you do? I'd like to express my appreciation for you stopping by, checking me out. Please like and subscribe so that you can be alerted to anything that I post. It's my effort to keep you up to date with what's going on in your local as well as your broader environment. This is Let's Talk, Khalid Bay. Peace.